I'm sure pretty much everyone listening to this is familiar with jigsaw puzzles, the old school ones that came in a box and you would open it up, dump all the pieces onto a table, and try to put it together based on the image that was on the box. Either on the front of it or the back of it, or somewhere inside of it, there's a picture that you're supposed to reconstruct. And trying to figure out what's going on in the world is a lot like putting together a puzzle. The only difference is that in the case of the actual jigsaw puzzle, you have the image in front of you that you can work with, and you always can reference that in trying to deduce where you should put the pieces and how you should put it all together. In the case of trying to figure out what's going on in the world, we're in a situation where we have all of these puzzle pieces scattered throughout the internet in various nooks and crannies here and there, and it's like a treasure hunt trying to find all of them and put them together into a cohesive image of what exactly is really going on here. But obviously the difference is we don't have the finished image to reference. So we have to rely on our own mind to envision what the image is based on the circumstantial evidence, which is the puzzle pieces. And as a result, we're going to get a lot wrong along the way. We're going to believe a lot of things that we look back on and think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I actually thought that was true. But you don't want to be too hard on yourself when that happens to you, because you're working with imperfect information. You don't know what the actual puzzle is supposed to look like when you're done. You don't know what all the pieces are going to add up into. And along the way, you'll put the pieces together that you've assembled in a certain way, and you'll think, oh, okay, I've got it. I have the image of what's really going on here. And then a couple years will go by, and you'll look at those pieces you've put together in a different way, and then you'll realize, oh, that image that I have of what's really going on here actually isn't the case. And there's a lot of that going on right now. There's so much disinformation. I'm in awe of the amount of disinformation that is on the internet right now. On both sides, on every side imaginable. It's everywhere. Just constant disinformation. And I really feel bad for people who are just now getting into this. There are a lot of people that are only on the cusp of becoming aware of some of this stuff based on what has happened the past 2 years. And they are confronted with an environment that I and others just didn't have to deal with. We didn't have this kind of resistance. Sure, there was disinformation back then, just like there is now, but it wasn't the same as it is now. It was just a whole different environment. And in many ways, it was much easier to find the puzzle pieces, is what I mean, compared to now. It would be much more difficult to try to search your way to the actual information that helps you put together an image that resembles what might be going on here, right? And I have to say, what might be going on, because we're all born, or most of us, I'll speak for myself anyway, are born in the dark here. We don't have that image. So I have to have the self-awareness to say, okay, this might be what's going on based on everything that I've been able to piece together, and of course my own intuitive view of that information. But still, I would not have the arrogance at this stage to say, oh, well, this is it. And by that, I don't mean what's put in black and white by the World Economic Forum. I'm talking about what's really going on. beneath the surface of supranational front organizations like that. Everyone can piece together what's put in black and white by organizations like that. I mean, they've been writing about it for decades at this point, out in the open. I mean, longer than decades, right? You can find this kind of stuff in books from the 1800s. So in the spirit of reassessing what my view of the situation is, I want to highlight some of my biggest misses, some of the things that I thought was a piece to the puzzle and definitely was not. It was something that I had tunnel vision on, or a better way to put it would be a blind spot. You have this image in your mind, you're putting all of the pieces together, but you have this blind spot in one section of the image that you just, for whatever reason, you don't see it. And that blind spot alters your ability to put the pieces together correctly, but you don't know that at the time. So I want to get into a couple of the blind spots that I recognized along the way, just as a way to correct the record and also try to lead by example in an environment where everyone has it figured out. Everyone has the right answer. Everyone knows exactly what's going on about every single subject that's in the news. That's just the reality of the situation. And I guess before getting into the specific examples, we could examine why that is. Why are we all wired to behave in this way? Well, the obvious first answer to that question is the school system that we are all, for the most part, subject to. I mean, those of us who are slaves anyway, right? Those of us who don't go to the elite private schools that don't exactly have open enrollment, right? These are the kind of things that are invite only. But anyway, in our education system, we are trained to memorize and regurgitate. This is how we are tested. You are given a set of questions, and if you memorize the information that was going to be on that test, you then regurgitate what you memorized, and then you are graded based on how well you regurgitated it. And if you do very well as a regurgitator, you get a high grade, an A or a B, whatever the case may be. And after many, many years of doing this memorization and regurgitation routine, we just become accustomed to processing information in this way. So that when we are exposed to media, and you have these talking heads bobbling their heads up and down, back and forth, yapping out of their mouths, as these people tend to do, you then take that information, you memorize it, and then you regurgitate that as well, based on how you've learned to do that from a very young age in school. So we have this truly artificially intelligent environment going on where people are robots. They are artificial intelligence. They have no opinions on their own, and I include myself in this. Growing up, I was the exact same way. I had strong opinions on all kinds of things that I didn't know anything about. Really. I thought I did because we are trained through memorization and recall that everyone has a valid opinion so long as they engaged in that process. If you can regurgitate all of the talking points on your side, well, that proves that you've done the research necessary to have the opinion. Of course, you don't know that it's set up so that the other side, which is doing the same thing, conflicts perfectly with your side, so nothing is ever resolved or achieved. You just go back and forth into eternity. And that's how all of the platforms are set up in this way ahead of time. That is all scripted in advance, but you don't know that. And however you get into the information about what's really going on in the world, or what might really be going on in the world, when you first get into it, you're still in that memorization, regurgitation mindset. So, as I've said before, you just take the new set of information that you've acquired and then you regurgitate that. And that is what I want to go over here, two specific examples of me doing that. And I went into the stuff in the beginning about the puzzle pieces and the image to cut myself some slack before I do this, because I'm going to be pretty hard on myself here. But I wanted to cut myself some slack in the sense of, hey, at least I'm trying, right? At least I'm attempting to make myself aware of what's really going on in an environment where it's an unfair game. The rules of the game have been set up so that I was made ignorant of reality, and then I have to work very hard to try to figure out what's really going on in a sea of lies and disinformation. And that's a very difficult task. So you don't want to be too hard on yourself for what you at one time believe as you go through that process. But you also have to understand eventually what it is that you were actually doing, and that some of the things you claim to know, you really didn't know. You were just doing the memorization and regurgitation exercise, but you were just spinning it in a different direction where you were trying to build this case against the people or entities that are in control of this world currently. And as a result, you can get caught in the trap of instantaneously regurgitating and repeating something that might not be true, but that doesn't matter because the initial impulse that you feel is to go with it because, oh, hey, this fits my narrative. This fits how I want to perceive the world and how I want to portray those around me, specifically this cartel of individuals that operate in the shadows. Anyways, first, this is an old recording I did from 2017, and I'm just going to play this so we can observe what it sounds like to be both insane and wrong at the same time. So I'll just play this real quick. But of course, then you have all of the arguments you'll hear about vitamin B12. Oh, you got to get that B12 from that animal flesh. Okay, so that is obviously very cringe. I am cringing inside as I play that back because I couldn't be more wrong in what I'm saying. And the arrogance of it, the audacity of it. I'm making a joke. I'm so certain in my opinion on the matter that I'm making a joke like, oh, B12, they tell us we need that, but do we really? Like, oh my gosh, that is so embarrassing, right? I learned the hard way that oh yeah, your body really does need these vitamins, especially the one called B12 to survive, or your nervous system won't function correctly. But sometimes you gotta learn lessons the hard way to figure these things out. But this is a prime example of arrogance getting the best of you, thinking you have things figured out based on information that you've acquired from other people, thinking those other people had pieces to the puzzle that you were putting together as an image in your mind of what nutrition is. What is the true state of the human body? How is it supposed to function? And when I was repeating that idea and laughing about it, making a joke about it, I had been sucked into this worldview that I'm going to get into further now that leaned toward the idea that most of the things that we have been told aren't true, But I had this blind spot where I kind of took that to the extreme for a while, and I thought about it like, why did I take it to that extreme? What was it? Well, eventually I figured out that at least a part of it is this information is so overwhelming and heavy when you first become aware of what's really going on here. I mean, all of the things that are going on are just, it's dark. It's really dark. And then you come across ideas and information that sort of push you in the direction of, oh, well, don't worry about it because most of that isn't even real anyway. Did you know that in most of these events, no one really dies? Did you know that they're just faking a lot of this stuff? Well, okay. Now that I know that, I can feel a little better about how the world is. In actuality, they're just conning all of us. It's not as dark as I thought it was. And the inevitable end game of that kind of analysis is just dropping out entirely, right? Because you sit there and you say, well, all of this is fake. Nothing they're presenting to me is real, so I really don't even need to pay attention to any of it. And this is where the arrogance comes in. They actually convince you that you are somehow smarter than everyone else for having this idea of the world, when it couldn't be further from the truth, but you don't know that at the time. Let me give another example of this. This is from my blog. This is from my Skeleton Key blog post. What a dumb word blog is. Blog. Sorry, anyway. This is from something that I posted on there. And this is the archive from the Wayback Machine, because I deleted this whole section and a bunch of other stuff. And I'll get into why I did that. But first, this is a great insight into, again, arrogance, thinking you know, when really you have no idea what you're talking about, as a function of the memorization, regurgitation, and repeating things that you think might be true because it fits into this worldview that you have created for what you think is going on. But I want you to truly look at how insane I was back when I wrote this in 2014. Okay? And maybe it's insane is an extreme word. Sure, there's a lot that I got right in this article, but that is beside the point when I get into this. So in this section, I want you to really understand the audacity of what I have done here. I have persuasively written with that type of language, as if I know, that nuclear bombs most likely do not exist. And to support this claim, I have included a link to the Asch conformity experiment, which really helps explain why certain things are the way they are, how peer pressure works, how the wisdom of the crowd, or lack thereof, works. And while useful, as it here related to what 30 years of Cold War propaganda could do to the mind of Americans especially, and Russians for that matter, which is very relevant to what's going on right now, but it doesn't have any direct relation to whether or not nuclear bombs actually exist. So that was link one. Useful, but no direct proof of anything. And then I have 3 other links that are all to dubious sources. Well, at least these 2 links are to dubious sources, which I didn't know at the time, of course. I was just repeating because it seemed like it was true. And the other link is not necessarily as dubious. I just took a quote from it. So only 2 links and then a quote that had a relationship to psilocybin mushrooms, or magic mushrooms as they're referred to from time to time. And then I've come to the sweeping conclusion, based on this comparison, in conjunction with a quote from Life magazine that, yeah, nuclear bombs don't exist and it's a big joke. I leave the reader with that impression based on that limited amount of information. And when I was reading this back, I mean, it was years that had gone by before I went back and actually read this again. And I could not believe the audacity that I had back then. I have no idea if nuclear bombs are real or not. No clue. I don't have the qualifications to even have an opinion on that. Other than the fact that I can say, okay, we've been lied to about a lot of stuff. I have proof of those lies. So it's at least possible. I can ask the question, but to write it like I did in a persuasive way, like I figured it out and you should believe me, is ridiculous. And I just want to draw attention to this because there's a lot of that going on everywhere. This is how people report information. No one says, I don't know. Well, it could be this because that doesn't get clicks, right? Or the corollary on television. When is the last time you can remember ever seeing a news anchor or someone on one of these cable news programs, they pan to them, ask them a question, and they say, yeah, I don't know. The answer is never. That's never happened in the history of television because it's bad TV. That doesn't engage the viewer. And that kind of thing would dissipate negative energy or agitation or anger or all the things that they try to promote through those programs, fear being the biggest one. If you had a balanced, nuanced discussion that left room for not knowing, that wouldn't be effective as a tool of propaganda, which is why you never see that. And so I wanted to draw attention to this because I was in that mindset when I wrote this. And so you can see that energy in this post, and you can see it throughout the whole blog, really. And it was only years later that I recognized that and started to come out of that in the last few years of my YouTube channel. The tone of those videos is much different than the tone that I had when I wrote here. And you know, for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why there was this certain set of individuals that continued to link to this post and other stuff that I had done, even though I had done a lot of stuff exposing them for being pathological liars, like disinformation assets. You know, they were promoting bad information on purpose. And I'm sitting there thinking, why do they continue to link to this stuff? It doesn't make any sense. I'm exposing them. And then after I reassessed everything and went back and looked at this, I finally had the light bulb aha moment where I said, oh, I see. Based on what I put into this article, it doesn't matter that I did the stuff later disavowing it, because they can just link to this and say, well, look, we agree on this. We agree on the main points here. But yeah, we have disagreements on other things, and they think that I'm not real for whatever reason, but don't worry about that. We're aligned on the main points. I didn't understand that I was supporting them by having this narrative out there that could be linked to. I just didn't get it. I had a blind spot, right? Yet again, another blind spot. But now I see, oh, that's why they kept linking to it, because this article was the key. They could continue to use it to support the disinformation that they were promoting, because I was inadvertently promoting the disinformation in a certain way, in the same way that they promote it. However, since we are all doing this together as a community, I mean, the minority of us who are actual real people anyway, and not spreading disinformation on purpose, because we are all doing this together, and we are each creating our own image based on the puzzle pieces that we acquire of what's going on, because again, we don't have the box with the picture on it. We don't know. we just have to put these things together and try it out, see if it fits, and if it doesn't fit, well, take it all apart and try to put it back together again. I mean, that's kind of what we're all doing here. So my blind spots won't necessarily be your blind spots or someone else's blind spots. So we can help each other see in that way. We can learn from each other in that way. And, in the spirit of this video, maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought this might be a useful exercise to put out there, given what has been going on the past few months. Take it or leave it. I don't know. It's up to you what you take or leave from the video, but I just felt like putting myself on blast a little here as a learning exercise in just how arrogant and insane one can be and still think that they know what they're talking about and pretend like they know exactly what they're talking about. I had an old video titled "Listen to Me Pretend Like I Know Things." I knew this intuitively way back then. I just didn't know the extent of it. But really, that should be the title of every one of my videos. And hopefully you realize that when you're listening to them. All right, that's it. Later.